So Labour have decided to release over 1,000 more criminals as of yesterday. We all remember how well that went last time. For example, as soon as they let a guy out, he was rearrested within a few minutes for a separate sexual assault charge. But don't worry, I'm sure everyone released this time is a well-rehabilitated, squeaky clean, anticipatory member of polite British society. Not quite, but...
I'm sure every single one who comes out on the way out of the prison, they hand them the social contract and get them to sign it.
Yes, I'm sure there'll be net tax contributors by sundown.
So he was released and he offended yet again?
He was re-imprisoned for an outstanding other offence that he was also being investigated for.
Okay.
But you're talking about people re-offending when they're let out of prison. Don't worry, Stelios. We'll get to that. Before we do, obviously the American election is now about 2 weeks away. If you've got early voting ballots, vote properly and accordingly. And if you want suggestions as to what to wear on election night when you're seeing in the results, well, we've got a new merch line over at lotuseaters.com. Remember, we aren't monetized on YouTube, so the only things which keep the lights on at this place are donations, subscriptions to our website for as little as £5 a month, and physical products like Islander magazine, released every quarter, and t-shirts and mugs like this, Trump's Art of the Grill. He did just want to grill in the business sense, but turns out his country going down the drain demanded a lot more of him. So go look at that in the description and on our website. Without further ado, so this is the details for the prison overcrowding scheme that Labour have conducted. There's a graph in here that shows exactly how many prisoners are being released. So this was on the 10th of September, 1,700 prisoners. On the 22nd of October, which was yesterday, 1,100, the Telegraph reported 1,200, prisoners were released. So the release scheme overall is looking to free 5,500 spaces across England and Wales by releasing some offenders to be monitored on a licence in the community after 40% of their sentence has been served, down from the original 50%. Bear in mind, currently 11,000 foreign nationals in prison. We are the country with the most crimes committed by foreign offenders in all of Western Europe, second in all of Europe, and yet they're still in there, we're paying for them, and they haven't been deported.
I don't think saying the number gives quite enough of a perspective on the state of UK prisons. 27% of our prison population is ethnic minorities.
But not only that, ethnic minorities, yes, I think it's 18% are Muslims, despite being 6.5% of the population. But the raw number of 11,000 foreign nationals, they could be deported tomorrow to free up the prison places. Now, the reason they're freeing up prison places is to imprison not violent offenders, but people that have committed speech-related offences after the civil unrest following the Southport massacre. But if you did just want to free up prison places, you could just deport them all home tomorrow. And it is a choice for them not to do so. And this choice has been made by Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood, who has been touted celebratorily as the first Muslim Lord Chancellor. And she's promised that the Labour government is going to build 14,000 extra prison spaces that were promised but not delivered by the Conservatives. But she also wants to change the way that sentencing works to prevent the overcrowding crisis repeating. Now, bear in mind, there are certain people in this country have over 11 offences, and those people are 70% likely to reoffend again. So there's just a permanent criminal class. So the idea that just amending the sentencing is going to stop them from reoffending is delusional, and we will explore the reason that they have this delusion later on. You going to say something?
No, I wanted to say that the left has diachronically bad ideas about prisons.
Yeah, it's founded on...
It's just, yeah, they have a crazily naive idea that we could just have some people, reform them a bit, change the way of thinking, and then they'll go back into society, and there isn't going to be any problem. That's crazy thinking.
It's either deeply politically cynical or founded on a fundamentally naive conception of human nature, definitely. She said, "We have an opportunity now to reshape and redesign what punishment outside of a prison looks like." Punishment outside of a prison. So what's the purpose of a prison then? Mahmood said, "We must be smarter about who receives a prison sentence." They also want to look into giving prisoners smartwatch devices, which has been piloted in the US, which send nudge messages to offenders that are outside. So basically the giant technological longhouse which keeps reminding you to say your P's and Q's. Great, love that. Why don't we just imprison rapists and send home foreign
Sorry, I was just imagining the smartwatch coming up with, "I see you're about to rape somebody. Have you thought about not doing that?"
Have you thought about visiting a community centre? It's just such a farce.
That's not a very nice thing to do.
Yeah, it's easy to understand what it means to be punished outside of prison, because it seems to me that with this early release, almost everyone is punished.
Yeah.
So the question is, who gets punished outside of prison?
Yes, the local community who have done nothing wrong, the law-abiding citizen, gets punished on behalf of the freedom of the criminal. So who are they letting out is a good question. Well, Shabana Mahmood was asked about this on Sky News. I don't know who does her eyebrows, but blimey, get a different makeup artist, love. She looks permanently surprised. But so she decided to be asked, this is Beth Rigby, Kay Burley, isn't it, who asked her, well, last time there were 37 people you let out that definitely weren't meant to be let out. How do we know that this isn't going to happen again? And Shabana Mahmood said, well, there's nothing we could have done about that.
Well, there was a very specific problem last time around, where there was a very small number, 37 offenders who were sentenced against an older Act of Parliament.
A victim for every one of those.
No, if you let me finish the point, that was not a problem we could have foreseen, because we anticipated everybody would have been charged and sentenced against the later Act of Parliament. That issue has now been rectified. That won't happen again. All 37 of those men were returned to custody, and their victims are now being kept up to date. So that mistake won't be repeated.
One of those mistakenly released, it was understood to have allegedly reoffended and has been charged with intentionally touching a woman. He has subsequently been recalled to prison. Baroness Newlove, before this happened, did foresee that this would happen.
Well, on the specific issue relating to those 37 individuals, I think nobody, I could not have imagined that there would be people in our system charged and sentenced against an older Act of Parliament and not the newer law that had come in 2020. So I think that is actually a unique set of circumstances. The way I have pulled every lever at my disposal in this emergency release scheme to make sure that victims are notified. We deliberately acted quickly in order to give the probation service the time to prepare. That is a big break with the early release scheme that the last Conservative government had brought in, and I'm determined to make sure that the usual arrangements for victim notification work as they should.
So, right, all of your lawyers and MPs were so incompetent that they didn't realise that different people were tried under different Acts of Parliament at different times. So you're so stupid as to be unqualified to do this entire operation. You were sitting there steaming.
The idea that this won't backfire is at best a luxury belief.
Yes.
Realistically, it's really sinister and cynical political machination.
Absolutely. Couldn't have put it better myself. But at least, right, gents, I know we're all frustrated. It's only 37, right? Oh dear. It's half of them. They're already back in prison.
There's space now. There is space now.
Yeah. Well,
how did they make space?
The spaces that they gave up, they've gone straight back into.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you're saying there about the deeply cynical nature of it, I refuse to believe that there was nobody in this government that didn't put a hand up and say, hold up, isn't this a really, really stupidly bad idea? And if nobody agreed, then they are all stupid. And if they all did agree, but then they decided it was a good idea for other reasons, then yes, this is a cynical attempt to terrorise the population of England.
Yes. So just for further context, this is Martin Jones, His Majesty's Chief of Probation, and he explained how for every 100 inmates released in the first quarter of 2024, so this was before the original wave of prison releases in September, we can expect to see similar patterns, 56 had been brought back to prison for reoffending or breaching their licence. So more than half.
I think also part of the point of this is that, yes, they will be going back into the spaces that they freed up eventually, because, I mean, if more than half of them are already back, then we can assume that most of the rest of them at some point will end up back there. But that's fine, because the ultimate goal of this will be that what happened to, I believe his name was Peter Lynch, who supposedly took his own life in prison the other day, will mean that all of those spaces that the political prisoners of this country took up will be free again.
Yes, here is Peter Lynch. I was going to mention him later, but it's pertinent. Grandfather, 61, pled guilty to violent offences despite none of the violent offences being listed in his charges, and it seems that he was just present at the fiery riot at the Rotherham Hotel.
It was a Holiday Inn, I believe.
Yeah, but he did not set light to the hotel himself, and he was instead shouting at the police and criticising the government. So he is a political prisoner, he has died in prison, and we knew ahead of time, thanks to a Sky News reporter, that certain members of these riots and protests would be subjected to unwelcome treatment by the Muslim gangs presently, which are actually probably lots of them being let out of prison early.
Yes, they were in danger. That was the point of putting them into danger. Either they are so psychologically tortured by what they're having to go through that, as Peter Lynch supposedly did, they kill themselves, or they end up getting a little accident arranged for them while they are in prison. It is evil.
I have a question. Do we have any idea of the profile of those people being released? Because, first of all, this news is something that I definitely believe that most people will think it's so bad it can't be true. That's going to be their first reaction.
Well, how about we look at some?
And you would say that if some people would say that this is happening, perhaps they did it with some, let's say, minor economic crime, but I get the impression that it's worse.
Well, here's Daniel Dowling Brooks, who was freed earlier than expected from a 7-year sentence for kidnap and grievous bodily harm. Right. So, not just stealing a loaf of bread then. So he's 29-year-old, freed 7 weeks earlier than he had expected from a 7-year sentence for kidnap and grievous bodily harm, which he had been serving at His Majesty's Prison, Swaleside, on the Isle of Sheppey in Kent. He was among the first of more than 1,200, according to the Telegraph, prisoners serving sentences of 5 years or more to be released on Tuesday morning. Not sure who's correct there on the exact number, the BBC or the Telegraph, but 11 to 1,200 is about right. Another prisoner released from HMP Swaleside thanked Keir Starmer, quote, "from the bottom of my heart," and said he had been freed a year earlier than expected from a 4-year jail sentence. A third was picked up in a black Rolls Royce by a group of men in matching hoodies. Turns out being a doctor and a lawyer and a pharmacist pays really well these days, where you can get Bentleys and Rolls Royces and the like. I wonder how they came for all of that income.
But you can't buy fashion sense.
Surrounded by a group of 10 friends outside the jail with a strong smell of cannabis in the air, Dowling Brooks, a father of 2, those poor children, said, "I love my life," as he posed next to a Mercedes G-Class wagon priced at £100,000. He said, "I'm a dad of 2, so now I'm out and very happy. I'm going to be good. I kidnapped someone who owed my friend money. I tied him up and had him at gunpoint. I beat him up. It was bad, but not as bad as they made out." Right, so clearly very remorseful. "I'm so sorry for it, though. I'm changed. Big up Keir Starmer." Suppose that's going to be on Labour leaflets in 2029. "I'm delighted to be released early. I'm delighted. I can't wait to go to McDonald's. That's where we're all going now. I'm free and can go wherever I want. It's amazing." There are some photos of all these early releases here and all these lovely cars. Very reputable individuals. Fantastic. Picked up a Lamborghini. There's that chap, Dowling Brooks. There's another guy, very happy. Expensive Mercedes. Curiously costly cars here for a bunch of desperate low-income criminals. I wonder how all their friends came about that. So yeah, when you say, people might just be concerned it's a mild, non-violent economic crime, no, kidnapping and, putting a gun to his head should have been attempted murder, shouldn't it? But there you go. All right then. Also, GB News, in the background of one of their broadcasts, caught a guy just escaping from prison.
And we need to remind people that a lot of convicted pedophiles and distributors of pedophilic content are getting suspended sentences.
Yeah, they don't even go to prison. We need to free up all of those spaces for political prisoners.
Yeah, no prisons. I'll just play this clip because it's absurd.
And Sophie, we're going to start with you because there's been a strange twist of events here. We've had a prison escape, as you've been reporting outside HMP Kirkham.
We have indeed. This morning we've seen around 50 men released from HMP Kirkham under orthodox measures as part of this new prison release scheme. But in the last hour or so, we've seen one man leave this prison in perhaps more controversial circumstances. My cameraman and I were stood here waiting to do our reports for GB News when I saw a man in all black appear. You can see the green fence in the distance there. He appeared on top of the fence, which you may not be able to see is covered with barbed wire. There was a black vehicle waiting just beneath. He jumped down, hopped in the car, and it sped off out of the prison. Now, within a few minutes, an alarm had begun sounding here at HMP Kirkham, and then police vans and cars have started to arrive. You can probably see a couple of them there outside the prison. Now, we've spoken to some of the staff here at HMP Kirkham, and they've confirmed to us that now what will have to happen prison is a roll call. The prison itself is holding around 600 to 700 inmates, but the difference between this prison and perhaps other prisons that our viewers may be familiar with is this is a Category D open prison, so some prisoners are able to come and go for work purposes, but then they must return. We also asked the police if this is a regular occurrence or not, and they were quite reluctant to answer, but it seemed like it is quite a rare thing for this to happen. So that's what's going on here at HMP Kirkham.
How reassuring.
So basically he said, I'm gonna leave, but because I want to, not because you order me to leave. And
how is this a prison even?
I don't know.
This country is... I mean, it would be funny if we weren't all paying for it, and now he's probably going to get on social housing that I have to keep paying for. And also, it'd be really funny if all the people that were legitimately let out hadn't constantly asked Sophie, as she was reporting there for GB News, to flash them and then made gun signs out of the window, and she declined their request. So yeah, just 37 people that weren't meant to be let out. Won't happen again, except all of these criminal delinquents and possible escapees. There's also another one that's been released early that Luca Watson has brought attention to here. He was imprisoned in 2019 for 12 and a half years for kidnapping and torturing a child. He's a drill rapper called Young Dizz from Newham. He's trying to figure out TikTok there, because when he went in, it didn't even exist. And he was actually profiled in a BBC documentary in season 3 of The Met. And yeah, he posted him torturing a child on Snapchat. Not great.
We used to have solutions. We used to have solutions for these kinds of people in this country. Solutions I can't talk about.
Yeah. He also seems really remorseful because while he was in prison, he recorded drill raps issuing threats to other gangs. Prison freestyle. Don't know how.
Why is he here?
Who had the phone? Why is he able to post this? Why is he threatening people and not getting an extension to his sentence? Who knows? There's also here's another criminal chap issuing an endorsement for Labour's early release scheme.
Hey, listen, public announcement. I want to thank the Labour Party for releasing all my brethren today, man. A lot of men are coming out of jail today. It's a good time, man. Today's a good day, man. Hey, kids, make sure you vote. Labour, alhamdulillah.
There's the reason they've been doing it.
What did he say at the end?
Some foreign gibberish.
Yeah.
Clearly well assimilated.
This is the Labour constituency. See, when you're in a democratic society, when you want to run a tyrannical regime, I suppose there's two very effective ways to appeal to voters, which is one, appeal to the criminal underclass by releasing them and not prosecuting them for their crimes, and appeal to foreigners by promising them gibs. Labour have specialised in both of these so far.
Well, this is the perfect case for that, because I just wanted to remind everyone as well, the people that attacked the police officers in Manchester Airport and cried racism before the CCTV came out, which showed that they instigated the incident and attacked armed police officers, they still haven't been charged. Why? But Grandad 61 goes to prison for shouting at police officers and has now killed himself.
And
because
also,
he was more of a threat to our current regime.
Is it also Labour councillor Ricky Jones who hasn't been charged yet?
No, he has been charged.
Okay.
Peter Lloyd has posted about this today. It's great journalism on his part. Ricky Jones has been let out on bail before his trial in January because he pleaded guilty. He's been allowed to walk free, despite calling for cutting the throats of Labour's political opponents.
Axel Ruda-Cabana still not gone to trial until January.
Yes. Fortunately, he has not been let out on bail. But
if he does get sentenced, we can be sure that he'll be released very early.
Well, he may,
judging by current trends,
he may not be released, and I don't know if we can say that. But what is possible is he may not even see prison time, because we know that Valdo Calacane is just instead interned in a hospital on mental health grounds. So that,
of course,
that could actually happen to Axel Ruda-Cabana, which lots of people wouldn't feel great about. Yeah, so I just wanted to round up this conversation just by saying, look, we've tried to cover this logic here on lotuseaters.com. We've spoken about it in segments before. I've spoken about it on my show, and I think there are two reasons here that drive this. The first is that, as you said, naive optimism about human nature. In this particular episode, I went through the sort of ideology of the modern state, which is that all people are just blank slates. Human nature is a product of education and economic circumstances, and if we just give you more youth clubs and more civics lessons and redefine British identity to be inclusive, then everyone will commit no crimes. And it's actually folks like Peter, who say really racist, divisive, populist things that are causing division and stopping us from getting utopia. So actually the worst crime you commit in society isn't a violent crime, it's being racist. And so that's their current logic. But there's also the other argument, and I spoke about Orwell McIntyre with this, which is blatant anarcho-tyranny, which in and of itself violates the blank slate, because it admits, no, there's a permanent criminal class, and what we do is we make them clients of the state, because by letting them exist, they're going to vote for us, but also we weaponize them against the tax-paying, law-abiding people, so that those people come running to the government for a solution for the problem that the government created, and so they constantly expand their power. Stelios, you wanted to come
And one thing I want to add is that racism is a problem for the state only when it originates from some people.
Yes.
And is directed towards some others.
Yes, they're fine with anti-white racism at all times, because that's not their constituency. And so I wanted to finish with a quote from Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, because this speaks to the idea that they are weaponizing criminals against the law-abiding population for political gain. So there's a section in Gulag Archipelago where Solzhenitsyn discusses how the prisoners of the Tsarist regime, predominantly thieves and murderers, were let out by the Stalinist regime and then made the guards to the gulags where their political prisoners were interned. And this is why. In old Russia, there existed, just as there still exists in the West, an incorrect view of thieves as incorrigible, permanent criminals, a nucleus of criminality. Because of this, the politicals were segregated from them on prisoner transports and in prisons. In old Russia, there was just one single formula to be applied to the criminal recidivists: make them bow their heads beneath the iron yoke of the law. And so it was up until 1914. The thieves did not play the boss either in Russia as a whole or in Russian prisons. But the shackles fell and freedom dawned. In the desertion of millions in 1917 and then in the Civil War, all human passions were largely unleashed, and those of the thieves most of all, and they no longer wished to bow their heads beneath the yoke. Moreover, they were informed that they didn't have to. It was found both useful and amusing that they were enemies of private property and therefore a revolutionary force which had to be guided into the mainstream of the proletariat. Yes, and this would constitute no special difficulty. Reasoning on a social basis wasn't the environment to blame for everything. So let us re-educate these healthy lumpen proletarians and introduce them into the system of conscious life. But when this elegant theory came down to earth in the camps, here's what emerged from it. The most inveterate and hardened thieves were given unbridled power on the islands of the archipelago, in camp districts and camps, power over the population of their own country, over the peasants, the petty bourgeoisie, and the intelligentsia, power they never had before in history, never in any state in all the world, power which they couldn't even dream of out in freedom. And now they were given all other people as slaves. What bandit would ever decline such power? They are releasing the criminals to have power over you, because they have power over the criminals. Always remember that.
I hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, and if you want to see what else we're up to, you can watch our series Lads Hour, where we tend to have the most fun. This one was on about Batman and Robin, the 1997 film, and it was hilarious. And if you want to see all the other things we're putting out, you can always follow us on Twitter. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.